The sky above us appears as a vast, seamless expanse, a boundless ocean of air where freedom seems absolute. For a pilot, however, this open space is anything but empty or unregulated. It is, in fact, a complex and meticulously structured environment, layered and partitioned by a series of invisible lines, boundary zones. We call this system airspace, governed by a dense framework of rules to ensure safe, orderly aerial traffic. Within this framework exist specific volumes of sky designated as restricted. These are areas where flight is subject to limitations, not because the air is different, but because of what is happening on the ground or within the airspace. It transforms an open sky into a carefully managed highway system. Restricted airspace isn't a single monolithic category. It's a catch-all for various types of special-use airspace, where operations are constrained. Think of it less as a no-fly zone and more as a fly-with-permission zone. These areas aren't arbitrary. They are established for specific, compelling reasons, often involving activities hazardous to non-participating aircraft. The goal is to segregate those operations from general aviation and commercial traffic. This separation prevents conflicts between aircraft with very different missions and capabilities. It is a system built on trust and precision. The primary reason for cordoning off sections of the sky is almost always rooted in safety and national security. The most common and expansive restricted areas are established for military purposes. These zones serve as training grounds for the armed forces, where pilots practice complex aerial combat maneuvers, conduct live-fire exercises with missiles, and guns test experimental aircraft. Allowing a civilian Cessna or a commercial airliner to wander into the middle of such activities would be catastrophically dangerous. The restrictions are there to protect military personnel and the unsuspecting aviators who might stray into a live fire zone. These activities are often invisible and unpredictable to outside observers. Beyond military training, national security is a paramount concern. High-profile government buildings, critical infrastructure, presidential movements require strict airspace control. For example, Washington, D.C. airspace is extremely complex and heavily restricted. It includes a flight-restricted zone which requires special clearance and background checks. Similarly, nuclear power plants, industrial facilities. For a pilot, an aviation chart is not just a map. It is the primary tool for visualizing the invisible architecture of the sky. Restricted airspace is meticulously documented on these charts, using standardized symbols and notations that every aviator must learn to read fluently. On a visual flight rules sectional chart, the kind used by pilots flying by sight, restricted areas are depicted with a solid blue border hashed with blue lines. Inside this border, a unique alphanumeric identifier is printed, such as R4808N. This code acts as a name for the specific zone, allowing a pilot to look up its precise details in other FAA publications. It's the equivalent of a street sign in the sky. The information printed directly on the chart provides the most critical, at-a-glance details a pilot needs. Next to the identifier, you will typically find the effective altitudes of the restricted zone. This might be expressed as to 14,000, meaning it extends from the ground surface up to 14,000 feet above sea level, or it might be a specific block of altitude like 5,000 to 20,000. The chart also specifies the time of use, which can range from continuous to specific hours of the day or days of the week. Finally, the chart will list the controlling agency, the organization responsible for managing the airspace, such as ZLA, which stands for Los Angeles Air Route Traffic Control Center. For pilots flying under instrument flight rules who navigate primarily by reference to their cockpit instruments, the depiction is similar but appears on different types of charts known as IFR en route charts. The digital displays in modern cockpits, known as moving maps, also graphically depict these areas in vivid color, providing real-time positional awareness relative to the boundaries. Despite their name, restricted areas are not always impenetrable fortresses. Entry is possible, but it is strictly controlled and requires explicit permission from the designated controlling agency. The first step is to determine if the area is hot or cold. A hot zone is one where the hazardous activities are actively taking place. A cold zone is inactive. That status is not always published, and often requires direct communication with air traffic control or the controlling agency. If the area is cold, ATC may clear an aircraft to fly through as a shortcut, saving time and fuel. To obtain this permission, a pilot must establish two-way radio communication with the appropriate controlling agency. The frequency for this agency is listed on the aviation chart and in the chart supplement. The pilot will state their call sign. Example: Albuquerque Center, Cessna, November 123 Alpha Bravo. The pilot will state their position. Example: 10 miles west of the R5107 complex. The pilot will state their altitude. Example: level at 8,500. The pilot will state their request to transition the restricted airspace. Example: request transition. The controller will then coordinate with the military or other entity using the airspace to determine if safe passage is possible. The decision to grant or deny entry rests entirely with the controlling agency. If, however, the airspace is cold and not in use, the controller may grant the request. When a pilot flies into a restricted area without permission, a well-defined and escalating sequence of events is set in motion. The very first indication of an intrusion is often electronic. The unauthorized aircraft with its transponder broadcasting shows its position on radar and its altitude readout. It appears as an unidentified target on radar screens. Civilian air traffic controllers see the track. Military monitoring facilities see the same track. In a restricted zone, that unidentified track raises a red flag immediately. The controlling agency is instantly alerted. Their primary objective: identify the aircraft and get it out of the protected zone quickly and safely. The initial response is to attempt communication. Controllers use the emergency frequency, 121.5 MHz. All pilots are supposed to monitor this. Controllers broadcast a message in the blind. They announce the position of the unidentified aircraft and urgently request the pilot contact them immediately. A typical call might sound like, "History is filled with examples of airspace violations, ranging from innocent blunders to tragic international incidents." One of the most famous cases in the United States involved golfer Payne Stewart in 1999. The Learjet he was aboard departed from Orlando but failed to make its scheduled turn west. It continued flying northwest on autopilot, climbing past its assigned altitude. Air traffic controllers could not make contact with the crew. The aircraft had suffered a catastrophic loss of cabin pressure, incapacitating everyone on board. The silent jet traversed multiple states and flew through several restricted military airspaces, triggering a military intercept by F-16 fighter jets, which confirmed the frosted-over windows and unresponsive crew before the aircraft ultimately ran out of fuel and crashed in South Dakota. A less tragic but highly publicized incident occurred in 2002, when a 15-year-old student pilot, accompanied by his instructor, flew a Cessna 172 into the restricted airspace over New York City. At the time, post-9/11 tensions were extremely high, and the city was protected by a TFR. The small aircraft was intercepted by 2 F-16s. The foundation of avoiding restricted airspace is not a fancy gadget but a timeless and meticulous process: the pre-flight briefing. Before every single flight, a pilot is legally and professionally obligated to obtain all available information relevant to their planned route. This includes a thorough review of the latest aviation charts, the chart supplement, and NOTAMs. NOTAMs are time-critical bulletins detailing temporary changes like activation of restricted areas or new TFRs. Skipping this step is like driving a car without checking for road closures. In the modern cockpit, technology adds a powerful safety layer. The most transformative tool is GPS paired with a moving map display. These systems appear in large airliners and small training aircraft. They show real-time position on a detailed map with special-use airspace boundaries. Restricted zones are highlighted, red or yellow, and may trigger audible or visual alerts. This turns paper chart lines into clear on-screen boundaries. A key asset is the transponder, Mode C or ADS-B. The foremost best practice for any pilot regarding restricted airspace is to cultivate a mindset of chronic unease. Complacency is the enemy of safety in aviation. This means treating every flight, no matter how routine, with the same level of diligence. Always conduct a full pre-flight briefing even for a short trip to a familiar airport. Check the NOTAMs every single time you fly, as TFRs can be established with very little notice. Make it a habit to trace your planned route on a current sectional chart. Physically and consciously identify every piece of special use airspace you will fly near. Make it a habit to trace your planned route digitally. This ritual reinforces awareness and prevents shortcuts that can lead to trouble. Another crucial practice is to aviate, navigate, communicate in that order. Your first priority is always to fly the airplane safely. Your second is to know where you are and where you are going. Your third is to talk to people who can help you. The entire framework of restricted airspace, and indeed the entire air traffic control system, is built upon a foundation of knowledge, compliance, and trust. The rules are not arbitrary lines drawn on a map for bureaucratic reasons. They are invisible shields erected to prevent chaos and catastrophe. Therefore, adherence to the rules is not just a personal responsibility, but a collective one, safeguarding the privilege of flight for the entire aviation community. It is a matter of trust, and it is a trust that must be earned on every single flight. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you in next video. Bye.